What's up, guys? So we're going to be doing the side deck tier list here today, and the format's really changed since the last time I've done one of these, so it's going to be interesting to see what goes where. But start off with tasking. Tasking is S tier. I think everyone should be playing this in your side deck. A lot of decks can even afford to main deck this, and there's a couple of reasons. Firstly, this card is just good against everything because it can search so many different cards, but then also because it's specifically very strong against Kashtira. Arise Heart is mandatory, which means he will be triggering your turn almost certainly if anything happens, and Shangri-La almost always is going to be triggered in standby phase, which means this is live, and it means that you're going to have things like Tasking, Search Dark Ruler, Search Evenly, Search Lightning Storm. I mean, I'm sure there's even more, and I'm barely scratching the surface, but this card is just so amazing. It's a starter, it's a board breaker. Yeah, Tasking mandatory. You should be playing this in your main or side deck at 3, in my opinion, no matter what. Lancia, I don't like Lancia. My problem with Lancia is just that I think it's a bit... It doesn't really solve the problem of Kashtira. Yes, you'll sometimes stun their board, but even then, unless you're immediately killing them after, it's not worth it. And I also don't want to run into a tasking with that card. That's my problem with Lancia. It doesn't guaranteed stop them enough, and it only deals with Kashtira, and there are better cards that I would rather side against Kashtira that aren't Lancia, so I personally want to play it. Dark Ruler is A tier, but I think it's very specific. Dark Ruler is good as a one-off to play with tasking, or it's very, very good if your deck can natively break boards like Dark World. I think if your deck can't natively break boards, a lot of times Lancia is, Dark Ruler, is bad because you Dark Ruler the board, you get stunned by one Ash, and then they just kill you because you didn't get rid of any monsters, and you're not killing them that turn. So I only like Dark Ruler if you're playing like Kashtira, if you're playing like Dark World, where you can easily break their board and then play into your board with just one interruption, basically. Other than that, I don't think it's amazing, but I still think it's an A tier hand trap because in those situations you can basically win the game off it. DD Crow is C tier, there's just not enough decks that are relevant to it. Lightning Storm is A tier, especially again, and this is what's going to happen with a lot of cards. A lot of cards in combination with Thrust are just so unfair. One copy of Lightning Storm I think is very worth playing for almost everyone now, just because Search of Tasking, and it will out back row. It's a free way to out back row, which is just great. So yeah, it's nice. There's not as many back row decks in the game, but a lot of decks are putting back row, and actually against Kashtira, you do want to get rid of that field spell. You do want to get rid of what's it called, the Kashtira Birth as well, and a lot of them are playing Fissure as well. You want to get rid of those cards, and so having an easily searchable out to those is amazing. Denko is bad because there's not enough back row decks in the format. Pankratops is okay, but I can't see a reason to play this. It's okay, it does a little bit of job. Maybe if you're playing Blind Second Kashtira, it would be good because it's an extender and it's an interruption and it's level 7, but beyond that, I don't think Pankratops is amazing. Cyclone is a kind of B tier. It really depends on your matchup. The problem is right now is that, again, there's not enough back row decks or floodgates in the deck that in the game that I'm scared of that Cosmic Cyclone outs right now. So most of the time I can't see a reason to play it. I'd rather just play Lightning Storm or Twin Twister or Duster than play Cosmic Cyclone because of that. So it's a good card. Some decks might have room for it, but I don't think it's necessary right now. Anti-Spell is an S tier side deck card. I think so many decks have power spells. There's just so many power spells in the game right now, and so Anti-Spell should be in your side deck for going first if you have room for it. It just does a lot. Another nice thing about Anti-Spell, obviously, is that a lot of decks right now, if you give them one turn, they will kill you. So it's like you anti-spell your opponent, you stun them for one turn, you come back to yourself as playing Kashtira, you don't even need all of your spells, you just get to run them over straight away, and you can out-hit yourself. So yeah, really, really good card. Appointer's okay. I would say the problem with Appointer is that it's only at 1. I don't like cards that are only at 1. Now, obviously, you can search it with Tasking, which is great, but again, I don't know, something about when a card's at 1, I don't like relying on it. I don't want to rely on my one-off, and yes, I can get to it through Tasking, but I'm relying on me going first, then them hand trapping me, and then I don't have something better to search than a Pointer, because there are actually better cards going first, but I know in games 2 and games 3. Alpha's actually good. I'm willing to bet that Alpha's A tier right now. The thing about Alpha that's great is that, for example, again, if we look at Kashtira, you summon Alpha, and it can be over almost anything, assuming, not almost, it potentially can be over their board if they don't have field spell. Then also, they're forced to use their Kashtira negate on it, because if they don't, you're bouncing it to hand and you're getting rid of one of their cards, and it doesn't start a chain as well. And I think that's very important as well. The fact that it doesn't start a chain means that they can't negate it when you try and summon it, and it can also come back out to be a body to beat over something else. So I think Alpha's actually really, really good. It depends on the deck you're playing, but I also think Blind Second can work for a lot of decks. So if you're playing a deck that can Blind Second, definitely go for Alpha. Yeah, that card's crap now. Kaijus are mid. The problem with Kaijus is just outing one monster is rarely enough. But for some decks, sometimes it is worth outing one monster. Most of the time it's not, but sometimes it is. So they're okay if you can see specific use cases and specific matchups you struggle against. But other than Shangri-La locking all your zones, I can't see a situation where I only want to out one monster. There's no deck in the format that has one towers that I need to answer. Ice Dragon's Prison is quite bad right now. We're just not in a graveyard-centric format, unfortunately. Phantasme is also quite bad. It's been bad for a while. I'm actually going to put it all the way down in D just because we're not in a link-focused format. Its targeting effect is good, but there's just not enough decks link summoning to warrant playing it. White Howling, not worth. Blizzard is actually okay. I'll say Blizzard is like a C tier card. The issue that comes with Blizzard is that I don't only want to negate spells, and it's a bit reactive because obviously I have to wait for them to activate the spell and then I can negate it with Blizzard, and then they also get the card back to use next turn, and yeah, it's a bit slow and not as high impact as other cards, but it's okay. I personally wouldn't have it in my side deck. Contact C is bad, unfortunately. You just don't want to give people free level 6s. Warning Point, on the other hand, I'm actually going to say Warning Point is a B tier hand job, and I think Warning Point or B tier side deck card. And the reason why Warning Point is so good is because against the Kashtira, and look, you're going to hear me talk about Kashtira and Sprite pretty much only this, because they're the main two decks you need to worry about. There's so many other decks that I'm only talking about the main decks. But what's nice about Warning Point is, for example, they summon their unicorn, you Warning Point it, and they're a little bit stuffed because they can't get off the field. So I think that's really, really good. Now, obviously, it does have a disadvantage in that you do need to set it, and it's for going first only. It's not doing anything going second, but that's why this is the side deck tier list. So I do think Warning Point has a bit of potential. It's an okay card, and especially for playing Labyrinth or something, it's one to look at. I think Get Out is also similar to Warning Point, though. It's a bit better if you're playing a back row deck like Labyrinth, especially because obviously you can set this from deck. And what's nice about this is obviously you can pick 2 of their Kashtira cards and just bounce them into the extra deck. Yeah, great. Double compulse. I think that's great. Necro Valley is okay, but I'd say there's not enough graveyard-centric decks in the format that I'm worried about that I feel like I need Necro Valley. So some decks can probably play it, but I just don't think it's that worth it. Shared Ride is good, but it's with a caveat of what deck are you playing. There's a lot of searching going around in general in the format, but it really just depends on what deck you're playing, whether you can take the ultimate advantage of Shared Ride. Then moving on from that, I just realized I haven't been looking at you guys. Don't worry, guys. I want to talk to you guys as well, so I'm going to start looking at you more. Crossout Designator, unfortunately, I don't know. The thing about Crossout Designator is that there are some cards being played. So I'll put it at the bottom of A tier. There's cards like Eclipse, like Ash, like Imperm that'll be played in every deck, like Thrust. And so, although I've been playing in enough decks that you can warrant playing Crossout, it's always got the issue of if your opponent's not playing it, can be a bit of a dead draw, but it's not the end of the world. So I would say, yeah, Crossout is okay as an A tier card. Rivalry, I think, is one of the better floodgates this format to play. Even though Kashtira's main deck monsters are psychic, the extra deck monsters aren't all psychic. And they've got Machine and then Diablosis, which is probably a Fiend. Same with Sprite, where I think they have Thunder for their main deck. I don't know, I might be wrong on the Sprite one, I can't remember. Or no, as in the Sprite monsters are all Thunder, but then they play a lot of Sprite monsters as well, which they can get locked with. So Rivalry is one of the better ones, and if you're playing something like Plunder, this card is amazing because obviously you give them a token that's a Fiend, and unless they're playing a Fiend deck, they're a bit screwed. Mind Drain is not as important. I think it affects Banish cards, but there's just not enough things going on in the Banish zone that this actually affects. Skill Drain, however, is A tier right now. It's just good against so many different decks, and there's just not as many decks that can consistently out it, which is quite nice. Token Collector is not relevant, and it won't be for a while. There's just not enough token decks in the format. Summon Limit is very, very good, but again, it's like a lot of these cards is with the caveat of pick. In fact, I'm going to put this in B tier because it's with, if I'm side decking, I usually don't want to side more than maybe 3 to 5 for going first, and that's because I expect my deck to be able to win going first most of the time. I shouldn't have to side specific things. The only cards that I would be siding, and you'll see later, would be cards like D-Barrier usually. And because of that, I would say that given the choice between something like D-Barrier and then like Summon Limit or something, there's some matchups which Summon Limit's really good in, but in the matchups it's not really good in, or that it's only average in. I don't know if I would specifically want that, but it's still a good card. That doesn't mean I don't think it's worth playing. DDG is okay. I don't think there's enough decks that lose to this that's worth playing it. So yeah, DDG, let's say it's mid to low C tier. Twin Twister is better than Cyclone in my opinion because it gets rid of more. So I think Twin Twister is better for that reason. Super Poly is A tier definitely. In fact, I'll put it up here. What's nice about Super Poly is obviously there's just so many Super Poly targets now that it's hard to actually play around Super Poly. It's not like before where it's like you can easily play around. There's barely targets. Like no, there's Garura, there's Mud Dragon, there's all of the Albaz cards. I mean, there's just so many targets for it that you probably can get hit by Super Poly if you end on more than one monster a lot of the time, which makes it just a nice card. And then if you're playing a deck like Branded or something, or Invoked, I don't know why you're playing Invoked or Shadow or something, you can make it even easier by like doing it with one of your materials. So yeah, great card. Eradicate is very, very good. I think this is a good one to go with just because, again, there are so many power spells in the format. And for example, if I'm playing Kashtira and I know my end board only loses to a talents or something, because especially in Kashtira, the power spells are probably the things that are going to hurt you the most. You call Spell. If I'm playing Branded, you expulsion your opponent, and then you call Trap, so you don't lose. Or you call Spell, so that you don't lose the talents as well. I mean, it's just really nice how you can rip all of those cards, and also for following turns as well, getting that knowledge. So really, really good card. I wouldn't side deck Strike, personally. I wouldn't side deck it. I don't think it's worth it. Yeah. Just enough. If you're playing Strike, it should be in your main deck. Droll, I'm going to say, is A tier as well. Droll's good. It hits a lot of decks, and what's nice about Droll as well is that it can be used in both players' turns. So if they're doing nonsense on your turn as well, you hit them. I think the only time it can't be used is a draw phase. Evenly Matched is tentative S tier. The problem with Evenly Matched is that it leaves one monster, and so and it costs you a battle phase. It leaves one monster and it costs you a battle phase, which means that a lot of the times that one monster can it can do a lot. But in certain matchups, they will basically just lose. Like Branded is probably the best example where you evenly match their board and they're just so far behind because they have to commit resources to the board sometimes. So, and then also, again, being able to search evenly off Thrust is always going to be a good thing. So it's not a bad card at all. It's one of the best side cards, but there are some caveats to it that limit how easily you can play it. Talents, I'm also going to say is S tier, especially because Thrust is S tier. I think if you're playing Thrust, you should always pretty much play Talents because it nearly always makes Talent. They usually will both be live. So yeah, just always play them together. Droplets, I'm going to say is C tier, unfortunately. There's just too many cards that say don't put stuff in the graveyard. And because of that, it means that a lot of times you just can't activate this. Duster's very good. It's never not been very good, but it's only at one, unfortunately. Silent Graveyard, I don't think is relevant. Imperial Order is banned, so that's my fault for still having that here. Lava Golem, I'm actually going to say is S tier. I think Lava Golem is great. If you can play Lava Golem, play Lava Golem. It's just so good. And Sphere Mode is the same thing. If you can play Lava Golem, if you can play Sphere Mode, play them. I think they're two of the best cards right now. They just out so many decks. I think Kashtira players should always be main decking 3 Lava Golem, 2 Sphere Mode. They're just really, really obnoxious cards to deal with for your opponent, where you put your opponent in a situation where either they end on a weak board or they get outed by these cards in such a way that it's just hard for them to come back from. So yeah, really, really love these cards. Gamma is always good, but I would say it's not as amazing as it was before. The problem is that it removes the Kashtira card off the board, which lets them play. It's very good into Sprite, though. It's very good into most rogue decks. A lot of decks, if they put their first kind of playstyle on the board and you Gamma it, they just pass. And it's great. And then also it's nice because if you're playing like Branded and you Branded Fusion, and then they ash you, now you have Gamma. So yeah, having that is also really, really nice. So yeah, good card, not the best. Don't play Mirror Force, it's bad. Score Master is not relevant anymore because of the format we're in. Judgment is good in specific decks when you're going first. Again, it's like if you know you're the kind of deck that just loses to one thing, it's just like that rogue evenly or whatever, that's when Judgment is amazing. Gozen Match is also very good. I'll say it's a little bit better than Rivalry actually, just because attributes are more important to lock out now than types. Yeah, Gozen Match is good. The Forbidden cards, and even though this is Chalice, I'm going to talk about Lance as well. The Forbidden cards are okay, but you don't want to trade 1 for 1 at the moment, and that's where it comes down to. I don't want to put a card in my deck to trade 1 for I don't want to dedicate 3 spots in my side deck to trade for a card that trades 1 for 1. Lance is a bit better because obviously it plays around a lot of power spells like talents and such. But even then, I don't know if I would say it's worth dedicating the spots to it. Then D-Barrier is S tier just because we're getting some of these Sword Soul branded type decks in the format again. Even against Sprite, D-Barrier is actually really good against Sprite just because you basically just call XYZ and their main play significant portion of time is Zeusing you or Ninja Shadow Mosquitoing you. If you call XYZ, Sprite's not doing much to you going second. Like they can't really outboards with just link plays going second. So yeah, D-Barrier is actually even good against Sprite, I'd say, as well. Beats Kashtira, beats pretty much everything. So I'd say D-Barrier should always be in your side deck. And also, it's searchable by Thrust. Amazing. I think Reboot's banned. I don't know why that's still there. Shifter's actually, I'm going to put it as high beta. I don't think Shifter's nearly as good as it was before. There's just not enough decks that hard lose to Shifter right now. And that's my problem with Shifter. Yeah, like, everyone's main decking it in Kashtira and such, but I'm willing to bet that it doesn't even need to be there. Like, it's okay. It's okay, I would say. But I think a lot of people could probably get away without playing it. Nib, on the other hand, is definitely a high A tier hand trap. Maybe even S tier. It's always good at the beginning of formats, and it hits a lot of decks. Hand traps are good again, so yeah, Nib's okay. Belle is okay if you need it. The nice thing about Belle is that if they try and hurt you, Belle is a good defensive card for that reason. Is it perfect? Is it the best? No, but it's worth it enough that I would consider playing Belle if I was playing, for example, Branded, and I wanted to make sure my expulsion was resolving. Zombie World is okay against Flunder. Yeah, I think it's low city. I don't think there's any deck other than Flunder that's relevant against. Mistaken Arrest is basically Droll but slower, so it's going to be in C tier. Muradora ended up not being relevant, so it's down there. Kurugara, so I thought Kurugara would be good against Kashtira, but in practicality I don't think it is, because the Ibli lock is becoming more and more relevant. It's okay against Sprite. It's okay, I'd say. It's okay. The nice thing about Kurugara, I would say, is that it tributes monsters off, which means that it's hard to negate for a lot of people, and it's hard to play around if they're not expecting it. But even then, I think the fundamental problem with Kurugara is that even though it gives you its normal summon, most of the time, most decks can probably just play Lava Gate or Sphere mode, so that's the problem with Kurugara. So yeah, low C tier. Spellbound, unfortunately, is just not that good, especially now that Flunder's not in the format, it's just not good. Change Part is S tier. Searchable off Thrust, and then it's just really good into Kashtira, really good into a lot of decks. Chaos Hunter is mid to low beta. Now, the problem with Chaos Hunter is that it requires a discard. I think that's probably the biggest thing. It requires a discard to stop you, and your opponent has to special summon a monster first. And they have to special summon a monster that's chain link 1 because it's a when. So it just requires so many different things that it just, in my opinion, it's just there's always a better option than Chaos Hunter. But in certain decks like Branded, if you can use Expulsion to bring it out, I do think it's worth it. But beyond that, in fact, I'm actually going to put C tier for that reason. Beyond that, I don't think it's that worth playing. I have a second Kurugara, I don't know. I have a lot of duplicates down here, so I don't know why, but whatever. Swords of Concealing Light is good. I would say it's probably about low A tier. It's just a Book of Moon, basically. And then what's nice about Swords compared to Eclipse is that they can't change the position and they don't get a draw. However, the fact that it's continuous is a bit irritating. The fact that it destroys itself is also a bit irritating. But 2 turns should be enough for you to win. But yeah, Swords of Concealing Light is a good card. I definitely think it's worth having in your side deck as your book option. But the better one is Eclipse. Eclipse is just too good. I'm going to put it right at the top of A tier. Eclipse is very good. It's a better Dark Ruler almost, I'd say, right now, where there's not enough hard negates, and so it does the same job as Dark Ruler without preventing you from dying. But the problem with Eclipse is that you need to play smartly with it. If you don't have good knowledge and you Book of Eclipse them, a lot of times, do you know what ends up happening? You Book of Eclipse, they get a bunch of draws, and now you lose. So you do need to play with it intelligently. And then I guess the last card we're going to be talking about is the time cards. So Skyshot is just a caveat for all of the different time cards. So this is Dogwood, this is Skyshot, this is the Ladybug. And here's my perspective on it. And I'll say it's quite similar to what Joshua Schmidt said on it as well. You need to change how you play, essentially. And so if you're the kind of person who you're playing a deck that gets the time often, or you just don't play very fast, then sure, play time cards. But for a lot of people, it will be possible to get away with not playing these just by playing faster, playing more efficiently, making better decisions. And so I don't think they're mandatory, but I also think that you will probably be rewarded because not everyone can play that well. I'll even say myself, I don't play so well, so I play time card condition cards because I know that I'm not always going to make the best decisions, or I'm not always going to be the fastest to play, and so having a time win condition will give me some free wins sometimes. But yeah, it's a sad state of the game as well, though, that it's in, because I really don't like the way time mechanics are in Yu-Gi-Oh! But in any case, guys, thank you all for watching. That is a side deck tier list for now, so I'll talk to you all later. Peace.